Boro have won back-to-back games for the first time since November and recorded our first clean sheet since the middle of January. We've backed up the Stoke win with one at home to Derby, so fingers crossed we can now get our heads down and get our playoff push back on track. What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Project Boro, the series on the channel where we review and preview every single Boro game, of course. And today, as I mentioned, Boro got themselves a victory at the Riverside, which in itself was much needed, but it was also a solid one at home to Derby with a clean sheet as well. Back-to-back wins for the first time since we, of course, beat Luton, Oxford, QPR back in November. And just down to the craziness of this league and how poor the quality of the playoff battle is, it's put Boro back within 2 points of the top six, which is absolutely crazy when you consider the run that we've just been on. But I mentioned this leading into the game, after the Stoke game. That victory, as big as it only was meaningful if Boro were to back it up at home to Derby. And had we not, the pressure would have, I think, built massively on Carrick once again, especially with it being at home and how restless and how toxic the atmosphere was last time we were at home to Watford. So a victory was massive in this game, and I think as much as performances are important and we want to keep seeing Boro's performances improve, to which I think they are, the result is massive, and we are in that stage of the season now where I think results are probably now more important than performances, although it's important, given our run that we've been on, that we do start to see positives in Boro's performance. But as well as that, it was a good result, a big result, and a big goal for Boro that sealed the victory, because this was the exact sort of game you expected it to be. It's the sort of game I thought it would be leading into it. I mentioned in my preview, Derby, a side who have struggled massively since Boxing Day, really are on an awful run. This defeat has dropped them to the bottom of the Championship now. They seemingly can't score, they can't pick up a point. They're really, really in trouble. I don't think they've scored in 4 games now. And I think it was understandable, especially with John Eustace and knowing what he's done at the Riverside with Blackburn previously. It's understandable, and it was kind of predictable that they would come to the Riverside and opt to just sit in and try and get something, try and frustrate, and just come away with anything at this stage. I think just to get his tenure up and running and to get Derby something on the board, they would have took a point 100%, and that was clearly the game plan. They came to the Riverside. They probably looked at what's worked for a lot of other sides in the league this season who've come to the Riverside, who are down there, come to the Riverside, sit deep, defend well, keep it compact, sit in that low block, close up the spaces, and if you get a chance, take it, and probably expect Boro to give you a chance as well. But that didn't happen, thankfully. As I mentioned in the preview, it was all about Boro getting that first goal and not making any silly mistakes at the other end, and that was the case. And I thought, if the first goal arrived early, I think Boro would have likely filled their boots, but of course it didn't. The game dragged on and on and on, and with the second half being probably a little bit more scrappy and less in control and free-flowing than the first half was, it did look like around the 70th minute the game was getting away from Boro, and we were heading towards another really dull and disappointing to drop points at home with what might have been a 0-0 draw. But we found a way in the end, and that's refreshing, because this Boro team often finds a way to lose, never mind finds a way to win. But we found a way to win today, and I think based off of the form we've had lately, the results, today's performance, it was definitely the victory that we deserved. So then, looking into the lineup and the performance, of course, no surprise, the team was exactly as we thought it would be. Boro don't exactly have much wriggle room in defence at the moment, and even less wriggle room come the end of this game. It's typical Boro, the injury crisis we find ourselves in at the back, in a position we all said we needed to strengthen, but we didn't. However, it was the back 4, back 5 we fully expected. With Travers in goal, Ayling would be alongside Dale Fry, Borges and Dijksteel at fullback, with Hackney and Morris in midfield. It was the same attacking 4 that was so much more dynamic and functional at Stoke, with Azaz and Whittaker together, floating around, taking turns, alternating with the left and the central positions. Force stuck to the right, and Tommy Conway was once again leading the line. And to be honest with you, it was a pretty good first half from Boro, barring the first 10 minutes, I would say. We had a slightly shaky start, to which Derby really pressed us early and made the game quite a rough battle. There was tackles flying in. I think it took Boro a little bit of time to really get the ball down and get into our rhythm. Travers made one save. It might have been the only save he had to make, actually, in the whole game after we tried to plough ourselves out of trouble, which we were doing quite a lot to begin with, and it really, really wasn't working. It was putting us under massive pressure, as it always does. Hackney passing the ball out to absolutely nobody. It come out to, I think it was Abu Adams who took the shot for Derby, and it was well saved by Travers, who tipped it to his left-hand side. And that was only really the big opportunity Derby had in the entire game. You know, you'll be able to see from the momentum here on YouTube, on FootMob, it was just Boro dominance from that moment on. Derby simply sat back, hoped that they'd maybe catch us on the break, maybe they'd score from a set piece, and they looked relatively good in transition when Boro did lose the ball at times, but their final ball was just really, really poor when they got into good areas. The right idea was there, but they just didn't execute it well. They didn't have the quality to. So whenever Derby did get the ball and break on Boro, we were able to defend it pretty well. And other than that, it was just Boro possession and pressure around Derby's final third, around their box. And when we played the ball quickly, we looked really good. And I think they struggled to track Boro's runners, track the ball, all the different combinations that were working really, really well for us. You know, once again, Whittaker and Azaz were combining really well and roaming around in different areas, which I think Derby found tough to manage at times. Marcus Force was making some really intelligent runs over the top down the right-hand side, which almost got us in a few times, even if the ball didn't get us in. The second balls were there to be picked up, which gave us opportunities. So, yeah, it was a case of, I wouldn't say when, more so if Boro could find a way through this low block. And as we know, we've seen this script 1,000 times. We've seen how much Boro have struggled to break down a low block at home, and it looked like it was going to be the same story. I mean, we were creating, you know, it wasn't like we were getting prevented from creating chances at all, full stop. We did have a few decent openings. Finn Azaz hit the post at the end of the first half with a good curling effort with his left foot. Morgan Whittaker had a shot that whispered just wide from just outside the box. The biggest chance came when a beautiful ball from Whittaker played in Marcus Force, who timed his run to perfection, got in behind his centre-back. Shot was well saved by the goalkeeper, and then there was a rebound which may have been going in but was well blocked by Derby. So we did have good chances in the first half, but we didn't make them count, and Derby would have went in to the half-time whistle, I think, the happier, because they'd gotten to a significant milestone in their plan, which was, of course, keep Boro out, stay in the game for as long as possible, and I guess hope you can nick something. If you don't, you don't. It's absolutely fine. They still come away with a point. And then the second half continued in a similar vein, albeit it wasn't as free-flowing and Boro weren't in as much control as we were in the first half. I think Derby did step onto us a little bit more. They made a few changes. I think John Eustace maybe did feel like the game was starting to drift away a little bit, and there might have been an opening for Derby to maybe nick something more than just the draw. Boro had still decent prolonged spells of pressure, but we didn't create as many opportunities in the second half as we did the first, and Derby did get their foot on the ball a little bit more. They did have a few more decent crossing opportunities, a few decent set-piece opportunities, which for me were always going to be their biggest threat. I was always a little bit concerned by what they could do from corners, etc. But Boro defended them for the most part. We were put under little bits of pressure in moments, but thankfully the ball didn't fall to a Derby player in certain positions, and Boro were able to head and clear their lines, and Travers wasn't massively tested in the second half, even though it wasn't Boro dominant. But Boro did eventually get through the Derby rearguard, and honestly, it wasn't like Boro were getting closer and closer and closer, and you felt like the inevitable was coming. It kind of felt like the opposite. It felt like it just wasn't going to come. You know, the real dominant period of the game had come and gone, and it honestly felt like the game was just starting to drift away from Boro, and we were going to need a moment from somewhere or a spark to just inject the game back into life a little bit. It was sort of petering out, and there maybe were a few frustrations and nerves starting to creep into the Riverside crowd. You know, a little bit of anxiety, I would say, which is understandable. You know, I predicted that would likely happen if things didn't go Boro's way eventually in this game. However, thankfully, there was a big sigh of relief on the 80th minute, because when trying to play the ball out from the back, Boro pinched it high up the pitch, which they did quite a lot. Derby tried to play out a few times in this game, but they just didn't look comfortable. The goalkeeper didn't look comfortable. The centre-backs misplaced quite a few balls. Their right-back Nyambe made quite a few bad touches. They just didn't suit them playing out from the back, I would say. And they tried to do it. Morris pipped them to it, crossed it in, and then there were a few lashes at it. I think Conway had a shot that was blocked. It fell to Iheanacho. His shot was blocked as well. And then finally, it fell to Finn Azaz, who on the half volley just lashed his foot at it, got his finish away quickly, and it flew into the top corner before the goalkeeper could even react. And that was it. Game, set, and match. Well, you think that. There was always the worry that Boro would find a way of screwing it up, and don't get me wrong, there was a few occasions to which I was a little bit worried. You know, there were times where in their half I was just willing Boro to just get the ball, into the corner, defend it, hold the ball up in the corner flag. But we didn't. We tried to go for that killer second goal, which maybe in a game like this is okay. You know, you're going up against a team who haven't really troubled you all game, but still, it leaves the door open for that sucker blow. And against other sides, you are really putting yourself at risk. I do think, and I do wish Boro could be a bit more savvy when it comes to their in-game management in times like these. But you can tell the instinct under Carrick with the players is to just keep going and keep trying to score. I do feel like that gets us in more trouble than it does. So I would have liked us to just manage it a bit better. There were times where we should have went into the corner, didn't. Derby were able to break on us and put us under a bit of pressure. There was a period where Ellen Jr. just committed the dumbest foul I've ever seen on their right-hand side, giving them a free kick into the box with only a few minutes left. There just were a few moments where I was sat there thinking, are we trying to screw ourselves over here? Are we trying to make life more difficult than it should be? But thankfully, we did see it out. We did have one big chance. Bergzorg hit the post very, very late on, and then after that, I think Boro got a free kick or a corner, and did then keep it in the left-hand corner for pretty much the rest of stoppage time, and that was all she wrote. And it's a huge win. It really, really is. And I think it draws a line under the recent spell, and I think it draws a line under Carrick, and I think where he now is for at least the rest of the season. You know, I always was in the mindset of judging when the season's done and whether we've made the playoffs or not. However, I think the run of games and the run of performances that we had was so bad, it felt like the season was just falling apart at a pace that we just couldn't keep up with. But he has stopped the rot against Stoke, and then I think probably even more importantly, backed it up with another win. And again, key players looked better. Players who've been wildly out of form looked better. A clean sheet, a solid defensive performance. Yes, it's against a team who are now bottom of the league and are terrible going forward, but it's just going to give defenders, forwards, confidence to hopefully start a run of form now, which will get us back into the playoffs because, as I say, unbelievably, we're right on the brink of getting back in there now. So I'm hoping that was a spell that has came and gone. Gibson stuck to his guns. Maybe it's going to prove to be a good decision. I still feel like Carrick should be judged at the end of the season, but to save any early panic or any early panic press of the panic button, I think now with 12 games to go, I think he will now remain in charge and will probably now be judged on whether Boro make the playoffs or not. So it's good that rough period where it felt like anything can happen and the season was just up in the air, a little bit of stability has returned and hopefully a bit of consistency as well. And now Boro will just build on this. Because let's not get too carried away. We've beaten Stoke and Derby, two incredibly poor sides. What I will say, and I'll have a look at this towards the end of the video, we have got a run of fixtures which are very favourable, which I think we have to take full advantage of. But it's that argument, isn't it? You moan when Boro don't win, whether it's a good team or a bad team, but then when we do win, you can be a little bit harsh and say, well, you should beat them because they're here or they're there. End of the day, you can only beat what's in front of you, and victories look like they were never going to come at one stage. So to get 2 in a row is real credit to the character of the players, the character of Michael Carrick, to stick in there and find a formula which worked against Stoke and seemed to work again, especially from an attacking point of view, because Boro are never going to be all that convincing at the back. Let's be honest, going forward is a huge part of Carrick's team that simply has to click, and it looks like it's started to click a little bit more in the last 2 games. So look at the stats then before we take a look at the lineup. It's, as I mentioned, pretty dominant. I thought our XG might have been a bit higher. It's just under 1, but it does pretty much reference the result in the end. Derby, as I said, didn't muster anything. It's exactly the sort of away performance that I've seen and I've mentioned in numerous roundups throughout the season. They don't create much. They rely on set plays and maybe moments in games on the road, and they had their big moment quite early on that Travers made the save from. Other than that, Boro were pretty good, and our defence was good as well. I'm not going to just pretend Derby's attack was poor and that was it. Boro did have to defend at times, and there were some really good performances in there that I'll get to in a bit. But Boro, by far the more dominant of the side. 2 sides, almost 1 XG to their 0.18, 18 shots to their 5, 6 to their, or 6 on target to their 1. Yeah, it was a matter of Boro getting the goal they deserved, and on many occasions we haven't, so it was good for that to happen today. And then looking at the lineup, there were some really good performances in there, some really promising ones. First of all, I'm just happy for Matt Travers, his first clean sheet as Boro goalkeeper. I think the number of saves he's had to make in games this season, he thoroughly deserves that. And then the 2 big performances in defence. Firstly, Neto Borges. He is really coming into his own, and I'm delighted for him. We saw how upset he was after the Bristol City game when he come right over the fans and he was almost in tears, and then his celebrations after the Stoke win. He was right up at the away end with the Olays and really having a good time with the fans, and it was the same again today in the South Stand. Out of absolutely nowhere, Neto Borges has just become a bit of a fan favourite, and his performances have backed it up, and I think it's worked well for him in the fact that in a run of games and performances where so many players were so poor, yet it doesn't take much for a good performer to stand out, but Borges has been a real shining light, I would say, in what has been a pretty dark spell for Boro, and I'm delighted for him. I've rightfully criticised him at times when he's struggled and praised him when he's done well, but it's been sort of inconsistent. He's had a good game, then a bad game, and a good game and a bad game. And again, listen, he wasn't going up against Leeds United and their attackers today by any stretch, but I'm seeing improvements and I'm seeing a player who really cares, and that's what I love to see in a time like this. When a player can sort of stand up and be counted and really shine in a time like what Boro have had. Credit to Neto Borges. And what I will say is defensively I think he's getting better, but I'm really liking him offensively. When he picks up the ball and gets going with it and gets up to full pelt, he is a very good ball carrier. He's so good at picking the ball up, and once he gets going and there's space to run into, he's so good at dribbling. He can really carry the ball 30, 40, 50 yards up the pitch, but then he knows when to let it go and pass it on at the right time as well. He doesn't try and overdo it. So for me, does he have the crossing ability of Giles? No, but I'm finding him very reliable and a good ball carrier. So well done, Neto Borges. Really well done for how he's performed in recent times. And then the other, it's to, well, he got man of the match on FootMob, and I think he got man of the match with quite a few people. It was Dale Fry, the lighthouse. He has been immense in recent games. Again, another player who, at times when the defence has crumbled around him and we've looked really shaky, he's been solid, and defensively he's made no mistakes. He's been good in possession, but he's also been no nonsense when needed to be, and I'm just delighted for Dale as well. Amongst all the defensive injuries we've had, and he's had plenty himself, to see him in the team and performing as well as he has done, really, really happy for Dale Fry as well. And another thing to touch upon on the defence is that we have another injury. Of course, I'll reiterate the point I made, Chris made numerous times coming out of January. We sold Mark Clark, ironically, to Derby. He's ironically injured, but we didn't replace him. We brought in Edmondson, who was already here, and we were saying Boro have left themselves massively short with only 3 centre-halves. Lo and behold, Vandenberg's out with another knee injury. Edmondson's out with an ankle injury. Carrick said, I will be fine. Luke Ayling can play there. He's now out with an ankle injury. So we're down to Dale Fry, and Dale Fry only as our only fit centre-half. And that actually reminds me, when Ayling went off, Neto Borges had to actually slip into left centre-half with Giles coming on at left-back. And Borges was just as solid as a left centre-half as any of the other centre-backs I've seen this season. So another reason to give him huge, huge credit. In midfield, Hackney and Morris, I think, did okay. Controlled the game relatively well. I think Morris was doing typical Morris things, reading the play incredibly well, breaking it up, winning the ball back for Boro. Obviously played a huge part in the winning goal, winning the ball back high up the pitch. The front four, again, looked really good. I think they looked much better as they did with the Stoke game. It's good, and it's really important that we've stumbled back across a front four that works. Morgan Whittaker is improving, I think, massively. Week on week, he seems to be getting more comfortable in his role. I like him a lot more central than I do, glued to the right-hand side. I think playing with Azaz really helps as well, and he put himself in some really good areas. Could have had a goal or two as well today, and also played a really good ball into force, to which maybe he could have had another assist. So Whittaker's getting better, and I'm really happy to see him thrive alongside Finn Azaz, who is getting back to his best, 3 goal contributions in his last 2. He's now got 10 goals and 10 assists this season, which is so impressive. As I say, when he clicks, we click, and we need him in form. It's a matter of fact, and to see him in form is really, really good. Force, I think, was okay, not as in the game as he was against Stoke, but still had a big chance on that right-hand side in the first half. I just also like the runs he makes. As I mentioned earlier, he's always on the shoulder. He's intelligent. You can tell he's got that intelligence of a centre-forward because he just makes great runs in off the shoulder of their left centre-half, gets in between their left-back and left centre-back, and he just makes them think. He makes their defence back off because they've got to track his runs, even though he doesn't get the ball or maybe the ball doesn't reach him and they head it clear. He's forced their defence back, and Boro can then pick up the second ball. So he's just intelligent. He's also a good finisher, and we're all better for him being in the team. And Tommy Conway as well, although didn't get his goal today, worked hard once again up front, made good runs himself, and also could have had 1 or 2 decent opportunities also. So, other than that, a couple of subs come on. I thought Iheanacho looked good when he come on. A few nice, flicks and tricks, and I think he is the sort of player who is better sprinkled on a performance, if that makes sense. I don't think he's a player who should start for us. Don't think he's fit enough, as I keep saying, but I think we bring him on with 20 minutes to go. I think he can just sprinkle a little bit of added quality at the end of a game that could make the difference. So I think that could be Iheanacho's role, which I really, really liked. Wasn't much else to report from the other substitutes. And that then leads us to finish with the league table. And unbelievably, Boro find themselves 2 points outside of the top 6. Now, there is a caveat here. Of course, there are a few teams around us who haven't played. In fact, I think only maybe Bristol City have actually a game in hand now, because I think they're in FA Cup action this weekend, if I'm right, or maybe they just haven't played yet. I'm not too sure. But the win puts Boro back up to 8th. As I said, 2 points off of West Brom. I do feel like West Brom and Coventry are still the 2 that I worry about. I do feel like Blackburn's inconsistencies will make them fall short. And you could say the same for Bristol City and all the teams below them. They're just teams you can't quite trust enough, a bit like us, in fairness, to really, really put a run together. But Coventry look unstoppable at the moment. I think they've got 8 wins in 9 now, which is an absolute joke. They might run away with 5th if we're not careful, and it might just come down to the one position that we're fighting for. And I think just with the teams around us, West Brom are the one that I am a little bit concerned about. They've lost half the games that Boro have. They've lost only 7, so they pick up points more often than we do when it comes to winning or losing games. So that might be where Boro's battle is at, with West Brom and maybe Blackburn, and you know what, possibly Bristol City. I don't want to write off the Robins either, but it's crazy that Boro are back within 2 points, and I'm delighted as well, because had these 2 results gone the wrong way, we could have been so far adrift in the bottom half, maybe even up to 8 points, off the playoffs, and then you really start wondering if and how you're ever going to get back there. So we've caught form at the right time. We've just kept ourselves in touch, and I really hope we can build on it now. And that leads me to finish with our upcoming run, because it's quite a favourable one. And I think at home especially, Boro have got some really, really big games to come up until and just after the March international break. So we've got 3 games left before the next international break. Swansea away is a tough one next weekend. I'll obviously preview that during the week. That's a big one that I'd love us to just not lose. Keep the undefeated run going. If we can win, great. Then you've got QPR midweek, another home game where you've got to be winning, I feel. And then Luton away, another side who, and I wouldn't have said this at the start of the season, you've got to be beating, given the position they are in. And then Oxford at home, another side you've got to be beating. So really, Boro should be looking at winning 3 of the next 4 and making this run of 6 games at least 5 wins in them 6. If you can beat Swansea, great. You might make it 6 in 6. Do I really think that'll happen? No. As I say, I'm not getting carried away with Boro. We've won back-to-back games now only for the 3rd time this season, so to see us go beyond that would be great, but hasn't happened much this season. But we've got to be looking at the next 4 games up until we then hit Blackburn away, which is a place we never do well at. Then we have Leeds at home and Millwall away. That's when the fixtures start to get difficult again. And then when we start looking at April, my God, you've got to go to Hillsborough. We've got Norwich and Coventry to finish the season. They could be playoff deciders, really. So we've got to get ourselves back in the mix well and truly, so these games towards the end of April aren't, dead ringers to which we're too far off and it doesn't matter. We've got to be in there, so we've got a little bit of room for error. So when we go to sides around us, it's not win or bust, and they don't feel like cup finals. So we'll see. But that's my thoughts and feelings on the Derby victory. Let me know yours in the comments section below. As always, if you're watching here on YouTube, do give me a like and a rating on the video and subscribe if you are new. And if you like what you see, we review and preview every Boro game, as I say. And of course, do championship content as well. I might do another Project Boro live stream this week on Wednesday night if there's not much else on, given the fact there's not much Boro news and we haven't got a midweek game. So I might do another live stream midweek, guys. So keep your eyes peeled for that. If you're listening on the community tab, if you're listening on the podcast providers, as always, do hit a like and a rating over there. You can find that via links in the description below if you want to do that. And follow me over there and listen to these on the go. But until next time, guys, do take care. I'll be back midweek to maybe do a Project Boro live and preview the Swansea game. But until then, take care and I'll see you all in the next one.